When we talk about success, most people imagine the big wins, the breakthrough moments, the celebrations, the highlight reels. But if we peel back the curtain, what we find is far less glamorous and far more human. The truth is, successful people aren't defined by a single moment of brilliance. They're shaped by what they choose to do every single day. It's not about waking up and having all the answers, or about never stumbling along the way. It's about creating a rhythm of small, intentional actions that add up to something extraordinary over time. Success is less about intensity and more about consistency. It's showing up when it's inconvenient. It's making choices that align with your values, even when no one's watching. It's being honest enough to admit when you've fallen short and brave enough to get back up again. And in a world that constantly pushes us to seek perfection, success actually grows in the soil of vulnerability and self-awareness. It's not about avoiding failure, it's about using it as fuel. Here's the expanded version of Keynote 14. Small daily habits shape long-term success more than grand gestures. Written as a natural, flowing speech of about 550 words, when we think about success, it's tempting to picture it as one big, life-changing moment. The promotion that finally comes through, the business idea that takes off, the award that validates years of work. And while those moments are worth celebrating, they don't tell the whole story. The truth is, success isn't built in grand, cinematic gestures. It's built in the small, quiet choices we make every single day. Those choices might not feel significant in the moment, but they stack up over time, and eventually, they become the foundation of something remarkable. It's easy to underestimate the power of small habits because they rarely come with fireworks. Waking up a little earlier to plan your day, taking 10 minutes to reflect before bed, choosing to listen instead of rushing to respond, these don't look like life-changing actions, but compounded over weeks, months, and years, they shape not only what we accomplish, but also who we become. Success is rarely about intensity, it's about consistency. The people who build extraordinary lives aren't the ones who push themselves to the brink once in a while. They're the ones who commit to steady, intentional habits that align with their values. Think about it this way, no one becomes a great leader overnight. Leadership is forged in the daily practice of integrity, of keeping promises, of making decisions that prioritize people over ego. No one becomes an innovator by waiting for inspiration to strike once a year. It's about showing up every day with curiosity, experimenting, failing, and trying again. No one becomes resilient by avoiding hardship. They become resilient by practicing small acts of courage again and again until it becomes second nature. The challenge is that small habits often feel invisible. They don't give us the immediate satisfaction we crave. Skipping one workout, avoiding one difficult conversation, hitting snooze one more time, none of these things ruin us in a single day. But they create a pattern. And on the flip side, practicing discipline, choosing honesty, showing gratitude, none of those transform us instantly either. But over time, they become the bedrock of a life that reflects our deepest goals. What's powerful about this perspective is that it means success is accessible to all of us. You don't have to wait for the perfect opportunity or the big break. You don't have to be the loudest in the room or the most naturally talented. What matters most is what you choose to do with the day right in front of you. The little decisions you make today will quietly shape the person you're becoming tomorrow. So when we talk about small daily habits, we're really talking about ownership. Ownership of our time, ownership of our energy, ownership of our growth. We don't need to chase the extraordinary. We need to commit to the ordinary, done well, done consistently, and done with intention. Because in the end, those small daily habits don't just shape long-term success, they shape the very story of our lives. When people imagine what it takes to succeed, they often picture intensity, those bursts of energy where someone works all night, pushes beyond exhaustion, or takes on challenges with sheer force. And yes, intensity can create impressive moments, but it's not what builds lasting success. What truly matters is consistency, because while intensity shows up in flashes, consistency is what keeps moving the needle forward day after day, long after the initial excitement fades. Think about a firework. It lights up the sky for a moment, brilliant and loud, but then it's gone, leaving only smoke behind. That's intensity. Now think about the steady glow of a candle, burning slowly, lighting a room, lasting through the night. That's consistency. Which one truly sustains us? Which one actually provides warmth and direction when we need it most? The answer is obvious, but living it out is harder. We live in a culture that praises intensity. We celebrate the big wins, the overnight transformations, the dramatic breakthroughs. But the truth is, most of those breakthroughs didn't happen overnight. They were the result of small, repeated actions that stacked over time. The athlete who wins the medal didn't train only when motivation struck. The entrepreneur who built a thriving business didn't just pour energy into it for a month and then walk away. The leader who inspires others didn't become trustworthy by making one grand gesture. They did it by showing up again and again with integrity and presence. Consistency is powerful because it builds trust. When you consistently show up for yourself, you build trust in your own ability to follow through. When you consistently show up for others, you build trust in your relationships and leadership. And trust, once established, becomes the bedrock of both personal and professional success. Intensity can impress people, but consistency earns their confidence. Another reason consistency matters more than intensity is that it creates momentum. Big bursts of energy often leave us drained, but consistent effort compounds. A small action repeated daily becomes a habit. That habit, practiced over weeks and months, transforms into character. And that character is what sustains us in the long run. It's not glamorous, but it's the kind of foundation that doesn't crumble when life gets hard. Consistency also teaches resilience. When you practice showing up day after day, even when you don't feel like it, you prove to yourself that your commitment is stronger than your emotions. And that is where real strength comes from. Not the temporary high of intensity, but the steady practice of discipline. It's in the days when motivation is absent and the spark feels dull that consistency becomes a teacher, shaping us into people who can endure, adapt, and keep going. So when we talk about success, let's stop overvaluing intensity and start honoring consistency. The quiet, unglamorous, steady work of showing up is far more transformative than 1,000 dramatic bursts of effort. Intensity might make you shine for a moment, but consistency is what makes you last. And in the end, the people who change the world aren't the ones who burned the brightest for a moment. They're the ones who kept showing up day after day with unwavering commitment. One of the biggest misconceptions about success is that forward motion alone is enough. We're told to keep grinding, to stay busy, to never stop moving. But motion without reflection can easily turn into running in circles. Progress isn't just about speed, it's about direction. And direction comes from taking the time to pause, reflect, and act with intention. That's what keeps our growth aligned with our deeper purpose, instead of drifting aimlessly toward goals that don't really fulfill us. Reflection is powerful because it creates space for honesty. It's in those quiet moments, whether it's journaling at night, pausing after a long day, or simply sitting in silence, that we begin to notice patterns. We see where we've been drifting away from our values, and we recognize the small wins we might have overlooked. Reflection allows us to ask the deeper questions. Why am I doing this? Does this path reflect who I want to be? Am I building something meaningful, or just staying busy to feel productive? Without those questions, it's easy to get caught up in the noise and end up at a destination we never truly wanted. Intentionality is the bridge between reflection and action. It's not enough to notice what needs to change. We have to choose deliberately to act differently. Intentionality is about aligning our daily choices with our long-term values and purpose. It's about deciding that the way we spend our time, our energy, and our attention reflects what we actually care about most. Successful people don't rely on chance to shape their lives. They live with intention, which means their progress is steady, focused, and deeply connected to who they are. Think of it like a compass. Without reflection and intentionality, you might walk for miles and end up lost in the wrong direction. But when you stop, check your bearings, and set your course deliberately, every step you take moves you closer to where you truly want to be. You may not move faster, but you move truer. And in the end, purpose-driven progress will always outweigh frantic motion that leads nowhere. This matters not only in business, but in our personal lives too. In leadership, reflection helps us see the impact we're having on others, positive or negative. Intentionality then helps us adjust, choosing to lead with empathy, with integrity, with vision. In relationships, reflection helps us recognize when we've neglected the people who matter most. Intentionality pushes us to realign, to show up with presence instead of distraction. Even in our personal growth, reflection shines a light on where we're settling for less, and intentionality fuels the courage to reach higher. The world often rewards business, but business is not the same as purpose. If we want our progress to mean something, we have to slow down long enough to reflect and then act with intention. That's what keeps us aligned, not with the world's expectations, but with our own values, our own vision, our own definition of success. And when our daily actions flow from that alignment, the progress we make may not always be loud, but it will always be real. We live in a culture that constantly tells us to strive for perfection. The perfect career path, the perfect body, the perfect business plan, the perfect version of ourselves that looks like we have it all together. But perfection is not only impossible, it's also exhausting. Chasing it keeps us locked in fear of failing, fear of being exposed, fear of not measuring up. The truth is, real growth doesn't come from perfection at all. It comes from vulnerability and self-awareness, two qualities that require more courage than pretending to have it all figured out. Vulnerability is often misunderstood. People think it's weakness or that it makes us fragile. But vulnerability is the willingness to show up as we are, even when we don't have guarantees. It's sharing ideas that might fail. It's admitting we don't know the answer. It's asking for help when the weight gets too heavy. That's not weakness. That's bravery. Because it's much easier to hide behind a mask of perfection than it is to stand in the truth of our imperfection. Vulnerability is what makes learning possible, because you can't grow if you're too busy protecting an image. Self-awareness is the partner to vulnerability. It's the mirror we hold up to ourselves, the practice of noticing our patterns, our triggers, our blind spots. Self-awareness keeps us honest. It asks us, am I leading from fear or from courage? Am I reacting or responding? Am I building something aligned with my values, or am I just trying to prove my worth? Without self-awareness, vulnerability can turn into oversharing or chaos. But with self-awareness, vulnerability becomes purposeful. It becomes a tool for connection, for growth, for building something real. Together, vulnerability and self-awareness create the conditions for transformation. They allow us to step into growth without the illusion that we need to be perfect. They remind us that failure is not the end, but part of the process. They help us listen more deeply, learn more openly, and lead more authentically. And when we model those qualities, we give permission to others to do the same. In a world that constantly demands polish, authenticity is revolutionary. Think about the leaders you've admired most. Were they perfect? Probably not. But they were human, relatable, willing to admit mistakes and take responsibility. Their vulnerability made them approachable, and their self-awareness made them trustworthy. Or think about the moments in your own life when you grew the most. Chances are, they weren't the moments when everything went smoothly. They were the moments when you stumbled, reflected, and allowed yourself to be open to change. Perfection closes doors, but vulnerability and self-awareness open them. They open doors to deeper relationships, stronger teams, more meaningful work, and a richer sense of self. They give us the freedom to step into growth without the crushing pressure of needing to have it all together. And in that freedom, we find space to experiment, to take risks, to learn, and ultimately to become the kind of people who don't just look successful, but live with depth and authenticity. We often look at successful people and assume they must have been lucky. Maybe they were in the right place at the right time, or they had opportunities handed to them that the rest of us didn't. And while yes, circumstances can open doors, what really sustains success isn't luck, it's choices. Every single day, people who thrive are making deliberate, intentional choices that shape their path forward. Choices about how to spend their time, who to surround themselves with, what risks to take, and which values to stand by. Success isn't an accident, it's a pattern of decisions that slowly compound into results. The difference between luck and choices is that luck is out of our control, but choices are fully within our reach. You can't control when the world decides to recognize your work or when the perfect opportunity comes along, but you can control how prepared you are when it does. You can control whether you're building the skills, the resilience, and the relationships that position you to take advantage of it. Luck might open the door, but your choices decide if you're ready to walk through it. Every choice has weight, even the ones that seem small. Choosing to get up early and work on that project instead of hitting snooze. Choosing to listen instead of rushing to defend yourself. Choosing to prioritize long-term growth instead of short-term comfort. And none of those decisions alone create massive success, but together over time, they shape the trajectory of your life. And what's even more powerful is that every choice teaches us something. Either it moves us closer to our goals, or it shows us what doesn't work so we can adjust and try again. What's liberating about seeing success as a result of choices is that it shifts the power back into our hands. We don't have to sit around waiting for luck to show up. We don't have to compare our lives to someone else's highlight reel and assume we've missed our chance. We get to start where we are, with what we have, and choose our way forward. That means every day is an opportunity, no matter how ordinary it feels. And it's not about making perfect choices. It's about making consistent ones. Some days, the choice is just to show up when it would be easier to give up. Other days, it's choosing courage over fear or integrity over convenience. Over time, those choices create character, and character sustains success far longer than luck ever could. Luck is fleeting, but the person you become through the choices you make, that's permanent. When we recognize that success is built on choices, it becomes less about waiting for things to happen and more about living intentionally. It means we're not victims of chance, but active participants in our own story. And when we look back, the defining moments won't be the lucky breaks that came our way, but the choices we made in response to them, the moments we decided to stay, to risk, to rise, to keep going.